Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we're looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And also we're looking at the leadership, the people that are making a difference as we go to a planet with 9 billion people and how we're going to be able to take care of the 2 additional billion that are coming on. And then as we move towards the end of the century, we'll be at somewhere around 12 to 13 billion. And so it takes a great deal of investment and also foresight as far as what is going on. And so from time to time we have what's called the state of the world. And I have a gentleman sitting right beside me, has been on with us before. This is Sheldon L. Ray Jr. He's a Senior Vice President of Investments, Portfolio Manager of Raymond James and Associates. And Sheldon, welcome back to the Emerald Planet TV.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
It's always good to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your work, and you actually have a special banner, if I can use that, R&R Global Assets Management, and tell us a little bit about that as part of Raymond James and also something else that you need to share with us as well.
First, my disclaimer, everything I say, all opinions are personal to, have nothing to do with my employer.
Now we got that out of the way.
So R&R is not for rest and relaxation. It's for Ray and Richards. Doug Richards is my co-manager, and we've been managing money together for about 17 years now. And we manage large company equities and bonds for nonprofits and individuals.
Yeah, and you've been doing a fantastic job. We're both members of the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. in Washington. And just tell us a little bit about why have something, like a nonprofit like that, and what does that really do as far as the mix for investments, and how does this really reach into the community for humanitarian and other purposes?
Well, our club, as you know, is very fortunate. We have a foundation that's 93 years old now, with over $7 million in it. And it's a privilege to manage those funds because the income that we generate goes directly to various charities around Washington and the world. And a key driver for us is income yield. We currently run an overall yield of about 5% or so. That's strictly dividends and interest. As Warren Buffett says, you can lie about your earnings, but not your dividends. And it seems passé to some people, but mathematically it is extremely powerful in overall returns.
Yeah, and it's very important, and this is something that all the members of the Rotary Club are very proud of. And also now it's about $350,000 that we give out both domestically and internationally as far as humanitarian social development. So
exactly.
That's a significant amount of money for a nonprofit. Well, we really appreciate you being here and starting off with this, and we're going to be talking about the state of the world. It's kind of like a State of the Union address. But looking at that, what do people need to really consider before investing overseas or even thinking about being involved? Give us 3 or 4 points, Sheldon, if you can.
Oh my
I know there's many more than that.
It's a big world.
It certainly is.
We limit our investments for our clients to companies based in the U.S., Canada, UK, Europe, Australia, and Hong Kong. And that's a big enough sandbox for us to keep an eye on. Those are developed markets. We understand the economies there, the accounting standards, the securities laws, and the currencies as best as we can. And just that alone is the ultimate daily challenge. Going beyond that into emerging markets, it takes a different skill set. And most people in emerging markets now are doing far worse than the rest of us, but historically, in many time periods, they've outperformed the more developed markets.
So what do people need to be cautious of when they're thinking about going overseas? Because it almost like it swings like moods. Everybody's excited we're going to get into, the BRICS or whatever
Right,
the acronym
exactly, right.
of the week is.
The BRICS.
And then all of a sudden that goes down. Then they say, well, geez, maybe we need to bring it back home. What do they need to really think about, and how mature they need to be as investors to do this kind of things?
Obviously, the political risk is huge. Economic stability, government debt. Emerging markets are really devastated right now. A lot of people are worried about how much debt those governments owe, and many think a lot of them have borrowed too much in U.S. dollars, and now their currencies have collapsed. So how do you pay back U.S. dollar debt if you're in Indonesia and rupiah is down dramatically, or the Malaysian ringgit, you name it, Russian ruble especially?
Right.
That's a serious risk. Where their income comes from, commodities are devastated, oil especially. So countries like Russia, that's not a place I would invest. Countries like Venezuela, personally, I think its economy could just implode because of oil alone.
So looking at this in Emerald Planet, it's about the intersect between the economy and the environment. And that's really been our theme, from our existence. So looking at that and these swings, what are you seeing though? Because based on our conversations, it's almost like the environment, it's a steady uptick. It's not, wild gyrations up or down, but yet people more and more becoming concerned about climate change. They're more concerned about their investments going into fossil fuels and other things they think is not good for the environment. What are you seeing, or the sense that people that want to invest are sharing with you about this movement between the environment and the economy?
It's very real. Unprecedented things have occurred. As we discussed, we were talking about the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, the largest in the world. I think it's up to 800 or 900 billion now. U.S. dollars in value, and although most of that wealth has come from the oil industry in Norway, they are considering divesting in certain, non-politically correct industries, not fossil fuels maybe, but coal and others, and that's become public, and many of the large pension funds are discussing similar divestments.
Looking at something we were talking about earlier, the Shanghai market. And of course, we know that's a city, and it's the economic capital as far as China is concerned. But you look at that market, and then you have the BRICS nations. The Brazils
right.
and the Chinas and the Indias, the Russias, even South Africa of the world. What are you seeing there, and how does that impact on the other BRIC nations? And then in turn, how does that impact as far as the global economy? But then by extension, what do you see maybe the impact on the concern for the environment?
As much turmoil as there's been in China these last 14 days, Shanghai is probably the more stable market of those BRICS, believe it or not. South Africa is so commodities dependent as many of the others are, and they're all interlinked. These countries are looking to China to buy those commodities, and their growth rates slow down, as you know. One of the things about India, though, is, as we talked about earlier, its growth rate has now eclipsed China just in the last year and a half,
right.
In excess of 7% GDP. Although its economy is a quarter the size, about $2.5 trillion, at that rate, it will that gap can tighten over time, much as China's GDP size has with the U.S. the last 10 or 15 years.
Well, that's a very diversified economy, and I was, many years ago, first in India, of course, working with China as well. And, in those days, if it wasn't, labeled as a developing country, at one time it had been about fifth in the world as far as, aluminum, steel,
right.
Coal, just all the economic measures that you could think of. And so how do you feel about that, seeing it as in relation to the other BRICS nations? Why does India seem to be steadily increasing and the others, right now are having problems. What are you seeing?
It's part of it could be the political atmosphere, and I'm no India watcher by any means. India is in desperate need, though, of improved infrastructure, and I know those programs are going forward, so that could be contributing to the economic growth, but it definitely is more diversified. They have a technology industry that's nothing to be sneezed at.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yes.
Yeah. And when I was there about 3 years ago, I was traveling all over the country, and I was going in and out of the airports, and they're all brand new, just like what you see in China and some countries. But I was in an airport in Chennai. It was like brand new. It was less than a year old, and they were tripling it. I mean, already tripling it. And as I was traveling around, you could see this phenomenon going on where they're not doubling, they're tripling the size because of just, the mass use. And then when you're going towards, themselves towards 1.3 billion, that's a lot of people.
Right.
And they have a very established middle class. And so it's exciting to be around the world and see all these things going on, even though you think about the challenges and some of the turmoil. I mean, it's just like being in Tanzania recently. Even though there's tremendous needs for infrastructure, it's just people are excited, and more people going to school. They're getting into the high technology areas and all that. So looking at the investments that you're talking about and the people trying to do this, what do you see as far as not moving beyond the commodities, but like a China now that's going more and more into high technology, and they really see that as a growth, tying the rural to urban areas together, through the internet. What are you seeing through that?
As everyone knows, China is moving world markets like never ever before. So it's important to understand it. China is going through a gut-wrenching transformation from a export manufacturing type economy to consumer-based. That's painful. It is occurring. China manufacturing data came out that freaked out the markets Thursday night. That was negative, and the China watchers I know thought, well, of course, this is what's supposed to happen. Manufacturing's down. By the way, U.S. manufacturing data came out Thursday at a 2-year low, coincidentally. But if you're selling to consumers in China, you're probably pretty pleased. If you're Caterpillar selling bulldozers, you're not doing so well. So it is changing quite dramatically. The focus on GDP is a bit much, according to certain economists, and the growth rate of consumer discretionary income last year grew far higher than the GDP rate. It's far more important.
We got to be done. What do you see for the growth of what you're doing, say, next 5, 10, 15 years?
We hope we do really well for our clients and they refer more to us. It's the only place we get business.
Fantastic. Sheldon L. Ray Jr., he's the Senior Vice President, Investments, Raymond James and Associates. Thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip at AOL.com.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read. and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America and Reading is Fundamental.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet TV as we come to you from Washington, D.C. on a week-to-week basis as we're looking around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, products, and of course the people are making a difference as we move towards 2050 and the end of the century. And as we're looking around, how are we going to provide the investments and also the infrastructure, the development that's needed as we go to a planet with 9 billion people by mid-century? And have a gentleman sitting right beside me that actually thinks about all these kinds of things and works on a day-to-day basis to make sure that people are taking care of themselves and also taking care of the money and the future that they have and also the future of the world. This is Sheldon L. Ray Jr. He's been with us before, Senior Vice President of Investments, Portfolio Manager at Raymond James and Associates. And give us your standard preamble to all of this, and then we'll get started.
All
Sheldon.
my comments are personal, not those of my employer.
Anyway, Sheldon, welcome back to the
Thank
Emerald
you.
Planet
Thank
TV.
you.
And it's just really exciting. Every time I see you at Rotary, our luncheons that we have on Wednesdays is always new news about things that are going on in the planet. Different countries,
Yes.
of course. And we've had some things to say about the BRICS and China and all these things that are going on. But really looking towards the future, where we've been, it's been just a fantastic last 30 to 40 years. And, you know, even though we hear about, you know, the wars and all the violence going on, is actually the world in many ways is very stable, steady at. Many countries that were not investing and developing infrastructure are doing so now. Just tell us what you've seen through, you know, your travels about the world and some of the things that you learn on a day-to-day basis through just managing the funds for your clients.
I guess one of the things we mentioned earlier a little bit about China and India, and there's a lot to worry about always, economic growth in the world, commodities, but one anecdote is that, you know, all commodities are much hated, they're all collapsed. China's not buying as much as it was, and there's a bit too much focus on China to support worldwide commodities, I believe personally. And I've noticed that iron ore prices, this is not exciting for most of you, which iron ore is required to make steel, have collapsed from maybe $90 a ton to $55 and even into the 40s. But unlike oil, those prices have stabilized these last weeks. And I do think India and some of these other economies maybe are beginning to pick up the slack, where China is slowing down in that area. And with these other countries, as you mentioned, picking up the ball, maybe the global economies will be a bit more stable, obviously interconnected.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about, you know, the juxtaposition, China, India. Many people think of that because of just the sheer size and volume as far as the population base and the investments and all that. But if you look at the African continent, it's not yet at 1 billion, but it's about 850 million people in the continent, 54 countries. But yet it's been growing anywhere from 5.5% to sometimes 7% across the continent. Some countries, you know, much less, warring states. And, you know, this is where the bright spots are, even though you constantly hear about, you know, the intrusions of armies and things like that. But in general, across the 54 countries, things are happening. Latin America, South Pacific. So what do you see as far as where these countries may be going, say, over the next 10 to 15 years, just as a general trend?
You're right. They were on a steady trajectory the first 10, 12 years of this century, sub-Saharan Africa mainly. There's been some stumbling lately because of the commodities weakening. But we've seen a lot of capital investment go in, obviously from China. And I think on a net basis, the China activity in that continent is positive, talking to people on the ground. In most cases, there's friction, obviously, but I think the fact that they've had some success is creating competition and drawing investment finally from our country, late to the game, and others, Europe, India. So I think over time, you know, those countries will thrive.
Yeah, and this is one of the things. I was just in Tanzania, and of course we had people that we work with on a board that's working in Zimbabwe and other places. And regardless of what you think about the governments or don't think about the governments, the people are genuinely excited. And they're really encouraging their children to go to school, stay in school, you know, be able to get the computing skills, you know, be involved with, you know, the Internet of Things and all that. So looking at investments, is there anything that people need to be thinking about on a global scale about these ideas as far as just the planet in general as we move forward, say, towards 2050?
I think, again, emerging markets are so beat up that there's probably opportunity there. That is not what I invest in, but it's probably not a bad idea. The currencies are so devastated. I think the Turkish lira and so many others are at all-time lows or multi-decade lows against the US dollar. And there's so much fear that interest rate increase in the US will just kill these economies. And I just don't quite buy that. I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah. Looking at the dip as far as the value of the currencies and all that, and of course, many people, it's kind of doom and gloom,
Right.
But yet in many ways for the environment, particularly with the slowdown in China and now moving away from just a manufacturing and ship type of economy to where they want to boost the daily standard of living for all their citizens, becoming more of a consumer-driven economy. And they're saying this may actually be a good thing as far as the environment is concerned, because you know you're not having to have all this pressure for increased, you know, a power plant a week, you know, kind of idea, and building all these new cities and all that. Are you seeing any of that in the discussions and perspectives of people that you're talking about?
Probably a little early, but it does make sense over time. One of the things with China's recent devaluation that's got everyone all at Twitter, this is something that the world has been pushing them to do for some time. And it's a beginning of China being able to have a freely convertible currency. It is not that big a deal short term, although markets didn't think so the other day. And it's not enough of a change, 3%, to boost exports. That's just not in the cards. I do want to mention that since everybody's freaked out about Shanghai bubble popping,
And we're talking about Shanghai
market.
The city.
We're not talking about
Shanghai
Hong
market.
Kong, which is very different.
Right.
Shanghai's market went up to 6,000 8 or 10 years ago and crashed down to 2,000. That's a far bigger dip. And China's GDP was not impacted. It's not that crucial to economic growth. The other thing that's important is this year, with Shanghai's bubble popping, and it should, that market's only down maybe 1%. I think the US is down 6 or 7. And in the last 12 months, the Shanghai market, and we don't invest there, by the way, is up 47%. So all we read about is its market collapsing, but not the background data that's a bit more relevant. So bubbles happen, they happen here. We probably have one now in the NASDAQ. We had it 15 years ago, it crashed, and things are not so bad along the way economically.
And the whole thing about that, it's really, I guess, you know, we talk about bubbles and crashing and all that, but really it's more of a correction, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And what is a correction? Just for our viewers, both here and abroad, what does a correction really mean?
We're having one now. I guess technically people say a 10% drop and connotes a correction. And the U.S. market, my partner and I have thought, has been overvalued for a year and a half, with price-earnings ratios of 17, 18 on the S&P 500. And what happens is you never know what the catalyst will be to cause that correction. Sure, it's overvalued, but it just stays there. Well, it was Shanghai, which no one would have predicted. It's always something out of the blue. So
Yeah.
Shanghai.
And it's usually emotional. It's not
Yes, very much so.
financial and something that's very concrete.
So on August 24th, I think, Shanghai fell 8.6%. Everybody looked at their equities and they said, oh my gosh, I own U.S. companies with price earnings ratios of 25 or the NASDAQ. And people rethought with their feet and they sold. So it's a much needed, healthy thing, and the undervalued companies should come out on top over time.
I think what you're saying there, Sheldon, is obvious for people that are actually in the stock market or they're investing in something, whatever that may be. But for those that are less initiated about this, looking at the planet as really a global economic system, what are we learning through this?
That we're far more connected than we ever thought, or
That's
maybe,
one.
or maybe that we want to be in many cases.
Right. Okay. So that's one.
And you know, China continues to come up because, 15 years ago when China's central bank did something, who cared? And now, now not only China, but what's going on in India with steel production, and these things are just so intertwined,
Yeah.
inextricably so, and that will only deepen over time.
Right. And with the investments, because you have this, I guess we could say it's friendly competition between India and China, and as well as
Right.
some European countries like Germany, the United States, of course, Australia to somewhat, is that, really when you look at the 54 countries, say, as an example, on the African continent, and then you look at, Latin America, the 34 countries are part of the OAS, all these are coming integrated, and one happens, and you may see it's a tiny little country, but yet it makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Depending on, the commodity prices and all those kinds of things. Well, as always, we always run out of time before we have a chance to finish up, Sheldon. But looking at this, how does all this relate to the environment? We're going through severe climate change implications all over the planet. So how do you see these intertwine? What do
I
you
see it. I mean, it's unstoppable, I believe, and I think it's an economic driver. I was in Tianjin, China, and Beijing late last year, and there's a lot of talk of entrepreneurs creating new businesses that are economically driven out of necessity, but that can be highly profitable. And they will innovate and come up with things, same as here, that will benefit the economy and create jobs, hopefully.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. Well, this is Sheldon L. Ray Jr. He's the Senior Vice President, Investments, Portfolio Manager, Raymond James and Associate. It's always good to have you to talk about the state of the world, the state of the planet, I guess we can do as far as the environment is concerned. And thank you for being with us as we talk about these complex issues, the interrelated natures of the planet as we create the Emerald Planet.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about rigged out money. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals and the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is? What? More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People! The flood is imminent! Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we're looking around the globe in 144 different nations. And of course, as we come to you on a week-to-week basis, we're normally talking about the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. But also, we have to look at how we're going to actually provide the jobs and the small business to medium-sized business creation so that we can actually take care of a planet that has 9 billion people and allow them to be able to help and take care of themselves. And have a gentleman sitting right beside me who's been working on this for a number of years now. This is Charles. He goes by Chuck D. Vollmer. He's the author and founder of Jobonomics and the Jobonomics blog, and also the Jobonomics Worldwide Movement. So, Chuck, I think we got it all in that time.
Thank you, Sam.
Glad to have you back. Thank you for being with us. Tell us a little bit about the movement that you have, but the Jobonomics, and then also I want to hit a little bit, as you know, in this Jobonomics blog that you've been involved with.
Well, we started off with writing a book,
which we have right over here, so people can see the cover.
Yeah, and our objective was we believe that the economy is driven by jobs creation. Mm-hmm. And as such, we focused on where the jobs are, what are the general economic trends in the United States. And on our blog, we started posting a number of different issues. We have projects, we have initiatives, and we have general research. And we posted on the blog, Jobonomics.com or Jobonomicsblog.com, and we've had millions of people look at it worldwide, but our focus mainly is on U.S. jobs.
Yeah, and looking at this, I'm just going to put this up. Normally, we don't take slides and really just, talk about them in depth. But I think with what you're doing and the research that goes into all this, what I'm going to do, let's just take these, we'll just walk through them.
Okay.
And then we'll just talk about it as we take it. So let's just put these up and let's
this will be on our website and right. We take a look at it. But this slide represents kind of a macro picture. Your former guest talked about what I consider micro, what is happening in each of the countries at this period of time over the near term. We take a much more strategic picture. We see there's really two economies. The 20th century economy was a physical economy. It's an industry, Bureau of Labor Statistics looks at 13 different industrial sectors, manufacturing being one, but it really is a physical economy. And we're moving as a world into a digital economy, one characterized by e-commerce and the like. But driving these economies, in the 20th century, the physical economy was driven by, after the World War II, the military technology revolution. We had about 50% of the world's gross national product, so we gave the money to the military, and their research and development created the air and the space, the materials, even the ARPA, the internet, and those type of things. And it created tens of millions of new jobs. And the economy boomed because people at work and had jobs, and more jobs. We created occupations, we created business, we created industries out of those. After that kind of petered out in about the 80s, everybody's talking about we were going to rust out, and we had the internet technology revolution. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, bam, 10 millions of new jobs. But now we are moving on to different things. We have the energy technology revolution that has the possibility of creating new tens of millions of new jobs, and we have the network technology revolution. And the network technology is not a 2.0 of the information technology revolution. It is something quite different.
Let's go down to this one right here. There we go. Network technology.
Okay, network technology revolution is characterized by a perfect storm of technologies. And let me just tick off about 3 or 4 of the dozen. You got the big data and cloud computing. You got semantic webs, which are thinking webs, where we're talking about future as avatars and virtual environments. We have machine learning, we have robotics, and the list goes on. We have artificial intelligence and those types of things. And the issue with the network technology revolution is going to be not like the information which enables people, it is going to replace people. A recent study by Oxford University in England said that 47% of all U.S. jobs can disappear within the next decade and a half through automation. That's computer automation. Now, we're used to automation on the factory floor, but now that's manual skills, but in the future, it's going to be more cognitive skills. Okay, so we need to prepare our society for that. Now, the good news is the Gen Y and Gen Z. Gen Y or anybody below are millennials. They're from 39 to 19, and Gen Z is below that. We call them screenagers because they're always on the screen, right? You know, a TV screen, iPad, cell phone, and stuff. And these people are very used to the digital thing. Now, the country that is really leading the change from a physical economy to a digital economy is China. And I heard what the previous speaker said, and I agree with many of the things, but in a strategic concept, the Chinese maximize the physical economy, the manufacturing. And it was a miracle. They took 400 million people out of poverty in 2 decades. Now the problem is they have a have-not society. They got the urban and the rural. Well, those 400 million people generally live in the urban areas, and that's why the mass migration. Now they're looking at the rural. But they are looking at the rural now from an e-commerce viewpoint. And that's where companies like Alibaba, Tencent, JD.com are massive efforts in the rural areas. Alibaba is in 10,000 rural villages building infrastructure, giving people free computers, teaching them how to get on the internet to do commerce, e-commerce, and they're driving that to divide the consumption up.
Right. Well, the whole thing about it too is that when you have this rural-urban divide, that they really wanted to link these people together, and of course having the Internet of Things out there, and this is something that China really is working towards that, but it's bringing the whole world together. Again, this global economy and allowing China, the United States, and many countries are investing.
I would debate that. China in the digital economy is very closed. For example, Alibaba, which has the largest e-commerce now, and as far as numbers, it's
as far as the internal, it is.
That's right.
It's very close.
They lock out people. You can sell your products in, but you can't, or you can buy their products. They're very close. As a matter of fact, the Chinese have an extremely good strategic plan on the digital economy. The Premier of China just announced that we're moving all our resources into the digital economy, away from the big manufacturing and the big infrastructure programs to the digital highways and the broadband and those type of things.
Well, even looking at TV white space and some of these other things.
And they're focusing on small business. And that's what Jobenomics is about, small business, because big business is going to take care of themselves. Just in investment, they have probably 100 times more small business investment going on in the United States. And they are actually giving companies all sorts of tax breaks and access to public things to create small businesses. And I think that's where we need to go in the United States. The United States does not have either an energy technology plan or a network technology plan, and nor do we have a small business plan.
Go ahead. Now, looking at this energy technology revolution, what are you really referring to there, and what kind of jobs and businesses are going to be created out of that?
Well, we're moving to be able to create economy on either it's a physical economy or a digital economy. You really need 3 things. You need resources, connectivity, and energy. Okay, resources are both human and physical. The connectivity is, we talk pretty much of the network. But the energy technology revolution is you need energy. Just when we brought electricity, we increased productivity, work hours, by 8 hours a day because we turned night into day. Okay, so what's happening now is the energy technology revolution. In the United States, we have a centralized system. The big utilities, and we're talking electrical, we could talk, and largely transportation is the same way.
Right.
Very inefficient. The power, when you generate a watt of power, 1,000 watts of power, in an electrical generation station, I don't care if it's coal or nuclear or whatever, and you make it travel, 500 miles, and you turn on that light bulb and you deduct the heat that's going on with that light bulb, you get about 1% of that generated power in that. So where the energy technology revolution is, we're moving to point of use. And
what they call distributed energy.
Well, distributed is a term. We got centralized, grid level. We have distributed, which I don't like the term because that's just a junior version of that. Because what they say is a distributed is if you have in the house, you got to have a net metering, so the utility knows what you're using. I call it dispersed. So you got centralized, grid scale, distributed, kind of in the middle, and dispersed. Dispersed, for example, we can't account for dispersed. You look at all the light poles that are out there that have got a little solar array on them, and nobody counts the watts that are in that. So if I could take every household, 152 million households, and make them off-grid independent, I don't care whether it's solar, geo, hydro, or wind, and have them generate their own power, okay, this would create tens of millions of new jobs, and they'll all be local, okay, and we can start, rather than worrying about education and getting a college degree, we get certifications, and we can start millions of small and micro businesses.
So I'm going to back up to this one right here, urban mining.
Okay.
Because we're running out of time. I want to be sure we get all these in, and then we'll come back and revisit this.
The urban mining is an initiative that we've spent a lot of time talking to the federal level, the governors, and the locals, and the locals, the mayors, and the city council are the ones that get it. And probably with most of the major cities, they got all their people dressed up with no place to go because they got no jobs.
Right.
And they can't fund. And we have a program called Community-Based Business Generator to mass produce jobs at the base of the pyramid. We're talking about high school, less than high school education. And to get the money, we said, okay, let's monetize your waste streams. And urban mining monetize the waste streams. You got waste organics like composting and mulching. Right. You got waste energy that takes the waste products, or you got waste or raw materials. Now, waste or raw materials is the one that's got the thing. And so we started a company that is called eCycling USA to be able to take appliances, industrial materials, computers, and all the things that's got minerals in them.
We're going to have to stop it right there. Where you see yourself being in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
We'll look forward to continuing the conversation.
Okay. And thank you for being with us as we're looking at all these many different ways the future as far as the economy is concerned, but how we actually go from these very large, large investments down to you're really getting to the household and the community level. And so this is the future as far as economy, jobs, as we create the Emerald Planet.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo. I would like to speak English better. Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
el Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals.
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
Are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States on a week-to-week basis as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And I have a gentleman sitting right beside me. This is Charles, but he goes by Chuck D. Vollmer. He is the author and founder of Jobonomics and the Jobonomics blog, and it's a worldwide movement on creating new businesses and jobs. But at the same time, it's looking at a whole new economy. And there are a number of different features of this new economy, talking about the networking, urban mining, and other aspects of this. And it's just really fascinating, Chuck, that you've really been digging in on this for a number of years that I've known you now, and it just keeps becoming more refined and more sophisticated all the time. So take us through these three major sectors of this new economy, and let's talk about where we're going to be going in the future. What do you see?
Okay, as we talked a little bit about the last segment, which some of your viewers may have not seen, is that Jobonomics deals with business and job creation. Our focus is really on small businesses. We think big business can take care of themselves. And we look at the drivers of the economy. And the drivers of the economy right now, there are two revolutions that are going on. The energy technology revolution and the network technology revolution. And that has a potential to create about 10 million new jobs in the United States each, and millions of new small businesses.
And this goes back to the Jobonomics, is that your 20 by 20 concept. Explain that, the 20 by 20 concept.
Well, we looked at the economy. We have a book that we wrote, and for the viewers, the book was published about 5 years ago, and the rest of the information, the book number 2, we're putting it all on the blog. And Jobonomics.com, if you want to download it, it's free to anybody that wants to use it. But the idea of 20 million new jobs ever since World War II, each decade we created about 20 million new jobs, 10 to 20. And then the decade between 2000 and 2010, the aughts, we lost, a couple of million jobs. So first decade, not make 20 million, we lost 1.2 million. Right. So this decade, we need to create. Now we're doing okay, but we're about 25% underneath what I would suggest our goal. But we look at a rolling thing is, how do I create 20 million new net jobs that has got a small business orientation? And we look at three demographics.
And we're going to do that by 2020.
We were going to do that 20, but now we're 2015. We're looking at the 20 million new jobs by 2025. Mm-hmm. So we're keeping the ball rolling.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And because we can't create enough new jobs, because that's what's going to empower the economy.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the blog, this is something I told you I really wanted to talk more about this, the social media aspect, because you had the book. It was a great success. You had this all over the globe, but now you've moved to the Jobonomics blog.
Right.
Now, going to social media, what is that doing as far as the movement itself, and how are you engaging more and more people through the blog aspect of it and other types of social media?
Yeah. The book was nice. It got me into about a dozen meetings at senior levels of Congress and to many of the governors and mayors, and so it was an expensive business card. It sold nicely, but that was not a big thing. The word wouldn't get out, and we tried lectures and TV and radio, and that got the word out some. But it's the digital media, the blog, and it's on Facebook and Twitter and that type of thing. And we posted, rather than doing the second book as a book, we're putting it in these different sections. We have our research. You showed on your slide here is the employment and unemployment analysis. We have, a copy here. This is a pretty detailed, 20, 30 pages on unemployment, where the jobs are, where the fastest growing industries are, where the unemployment is. We try to look at the numbers, get people to understand it. And we're not in very good shape in the United States on that, regardless of what you hear. The unemployment rate of 5.1, it's a fictitious number.
Now, to explain that, many people are saying, well, we're doing better because we've dropped down from over 10 to 5.1 now. But what does it really mean as far as the unemployment rate? And this is the trick, is how is it figured?
Yeah, it's a figure. It's, there are 4 categories we look at the whole population. And right now the population is 321 million. And we see there's 4 categories. There's employed, 140 million. There's unemployed. The official rate is 8, U3, but the total rate is 10. Those are unemployed and the partially employed. Then you have a category called not in the workforce, and that is alarming. That's 96 million people. And those are the people, the able-bodied citizens that can work, that don't work. Now, a lot of them for legitimate reason. People go to school, they can work, but they don't think. But a bulk of those people can work, or on welfare or familial assistance for their family, that type of thing. And the 4th category is the people that can't work, like children. So we look at those 4 categories. And if you give you an idea, if you just look at the unemployment rate at 5.1%, that means that there's 8 million people unemployed out of 321 million. And that's grown by 42% since 2000. We use 2000 as the baseline. The total employed has grown by 11% since 2000, from about 134 to 149. And that's of this month. Okay? And that's grown 11%. But the people that have left the workforce voluntarily to the not in the labor force number has grown from 67 million to 96 million, with a growth rate of 25. So at the end of the day, the employed and the people that can be employed, they're not even looking. By 2020, the people that don't want to work are going to exceed the people that are going to work.
And going back through that, I'm going to go back up through that. We talked about this earlier as far as the network technology, and also you have the energy sector. Yeah. How do you see, being able to address this issue here of the people that are not in the labor force and actually just choose to withdraw themselves for one reason or the other? Right. And how do the dynamic of these sectors, you think, be able to offset this and engage people?
Got it. Okay. You got employed, unemployed, not in the labor force. Now, you had asked, I didn't quite give you the answer. It's technically feasible, the way we count today, on the unemployed to have 0 unemployment rate. Because unemployed is calculated only on people looking for work. So if all those people quit looking for work, we'd have 0 unemployment rate, and all of this move into the not in the labor force.
Right.
Okay, and so, we need to look at the total, the balance between this, because when you look at the employed people, the 144 million, if you take out the government guys and the government contractors, now you're down to 110. Okay, and of that 110, about 67 are full-time employees, and 30% rest are contingent workers. And contingents are workers are part-time workers, self-employed workers, freelancers, and that type of thing. That contingent workforce in the next 15 years are going to move from 30% to over 50% of our workforce. So most of our people, especially with the new guys coming on board, the screenagers, the Gen Zers, that don't want traditional things. So we look to where the big jobs are going to come, a number of jobs, the network technology revolution and the energy technology, which will create 10 millions of new jobs, and they're ideally suited for small businesses, and especially for task-oriented work. Because we're moving, when we go into a digital economy, okay, we go into more point-of-use type of systems for the energy, it is ideally suited for task-oriented work, contingent work. And for the Gen Y, the millennials, and the Gen Z, the screenagers, that's the ideal kind of work for the people. And there's 154 million of them that are going to enter the workforce over the next 15 years. So we need to look at what's happening and prepare that way for these new people that don't want traditional jobs like you and I had.
Now, the whole thing about this, though, Chuck, looking at, we have all these people that are, not in the labor force, they're not employed or not employable in many cases. How do we get them to move towards these 20 million new jobs that are going to be in the energy sector and the network sector?
Like I said, we talked about earlier, I spent a lot of time in the inner cities. Okay, and these are really hard times in the inner cities. Okay, and I've been asked that by the mayors, especially for the dropouts, for the and how do we get them back in? In Detroit, they asked me, so what do we do with 3/4 of the inner city kids that don't, that drop out of school, and the only opportunities they have is drugs and crimes. And I said, well, the guys that are going to be good gang members or drug runners or even pimps, I don't know if I can say that on TV, are the ones I'm looking for. Because these kids are not dumb, they're just without opportunities.
Yeah. And that's where you're trying to do, is to match the opportunity with the human being that really would like to do something as an alternative, but they only have these few options.
If you go in the inner cities in Harlem or in Atlanta or Camden or Philadelphia or Detroit, every kid has got one of these, okay? So this is the connectivity in the network. So I need to go ahead, rather than talking about physical, kind of industrial type thing, I'm talking about the next generation jobs. And when I hear a politician say, okay, we need to do more education, okay, and everybody goes to college, well, we're just going to move the bar. Well, the guys that used to have high school degrees to get a job now are going to need associate degrees or bachelor degrees, so we're not getting anywhere with this. We look at certifications, and we have about 9, 10 different training programs that you and I have worked on before. Okay, that'll take a kid with a 10th grade education, as long as he's got motivation and a little, entrepreneurial skills, a little drive to him, and he's connected. Okay, we can tailor a job to him. Okay. And a lot of these jobs, for example, we talked about the urban mining initiative of monetizing waste streams. Even for ex-cons, we work with the ex-con community and saying, okay, construction and demolition, they're good at demolishing things, solarization, maintenance.
Which we're doing in Ward 8 in Washington, D.C.
Sure, exactly. All those kind of things, we could do that. Now, if we're looking at more of the IT-related type of things and improving, let's take a...
Now, we're running out of time. We've got about 30 seconds left, so let's wrap it up.
Okay, so the bottom line is our focus ought to be where the jobs will be. Take the attitudes of the Gen Y and Gen Z, whether they're employable or not employable, or skills or not skills, and we can work them into these task-oriented, contingent kind of work, which is going to be the majority of the workforce, and provide them a viable way of living.
Yeah, and it's really important in the inner city, as we know from the work that we're doing in Washington, D.C., and all the other cities that you're involved in. But anyway, Chuck, thank you for being with us. This is absolutely always fantastic to have you here. And I like the way you broke out these 3 sectors, because it makes it very simple. People can see it, it's understandable, and it's something that's actually doable based on the skill sets that people have. And thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet. Good job, buddy.
You always say that to everybody.